Okay, I just want to follow up a little bit on what I said about Francis Shukartd, and some things I learned as I was looking into the history of the sedevacantist position. Okay. Um, I didn't bring him up to, ridicule uh, modern day sedevacantists. Okay. Like, here's the guy that started this idea, and his crimes, his moral failings, his theological errors are public knowledge. Like, just look at this guy, right? So in other words, if you're a sedevacantist, then somehow you're like this guy, right? I'm not saying that. It's not the point I was making. One thing that I've heard, time and time again when I talk to sedevacantists, when I was a sedevacantist, okay, and people bring up some of the wacko stuff regarding Francis Shukartd. Here's one thing I've heard, time and time again. Yes, Francis Shukartd, did all these bad things and all this stuff, but it doesn't mean he was wrong on everything. Doesn't mean he was wrong on everything, right? And one thing we do need to give him credit for was he was the first guy to recognize the real problem here, right? He was the first guy, so we have to give him that, right? And the reason why the quality of this man is relevant, okay, is because when here's why it's important. Let me not get sidetracked, okay? Here's why it's important, okay? If we concede for the sake of argument, okay, what the sedevacantists believe, the entire structure of the church, the entire universal church, okay, followed a false pope into a false council, came out of the council a false church, okay? That happened. Something that horrific, it happened, right? So there's 2 points I want to talk about. Okay, number one, if that in fact did happen, then the divine element either left that church at some point, okay, abandoning the church, all right, or wasn't strong enough to prevent the enemies of the church from taking it over. Okay, that's the first thing. That's a big problem. Okay, the second thing that's a big problem. Okay, granting that happened, for the sake of argument, right? Did God just abandon the whole world? Like, where is God in this equation, right? Well, God sent Francis Shukartd to tell us the answer, right? So when somebody has what's called an extraordinary mission, okay, their lives and their personal holiness is subject to examination. When we look at others that have had extraordinary missions in the church, we see extraordinary holiness in their lives. Okay? The other thing we see is we see miracles. Okay? We see like God putting his stamp of approval on their message, right? I want you to hear this man, right? This guy needs to be listened to, okay? This guy's raising people from the dead, or, curing the sick, miracles, public miracles. There's a reason we should maybe listen to this guy, right? There's an extraordinary mission here. We see the exact opposite of that with Francis Shukartd. That's the point I was trying to make. I wasn't just trying to rag on Francis Shukartd here, okay? We see the exact opposite. So the worst crisis that ever took place in the church, the guy God sent to give us the answer was Francis Shukartd. Doesn't match. It doesn't match with the way that we can see God has worked in the past with the church, right? And another thing about an extraordinary mission, that mission is never in contradiction to the ordinary mission, okay? And I mean, there's a whole theology on that. I'm not going to go through that. I don't have to make the point. But when somebody comes up and stands up and says, hey, everybody's got it wrong, I've got it right, I've got the answer, right? Well, where's your miracles? Where's your extraordinary holiness of life, right? Because that person is subject to skepticism. And so if God sends somebody with an answer, God also sends miracles to prove the message here. Okay? And when we look at the lives of, people in the past, like St. Paul, St. Vincent Favre, okay, that had these extraordinary missions. They're extraordinarily holy people, and we have miracles. Okay, not just claims of miracles, but like approved by the church miracles. Okay, and so with Francis Shukartd, we see the exact opposite. Okay, so that gives somebody a reason to really question the entire thing, okay? And another issue that would bring, that a sedevacantists would raise, right? They're like, well, I don't believe sedevacantism because of Francis Shukartd. I mean, Bishop Provianus is a sedevacantist. I listen to him. He's a good man, He's a very holy man, very good man. Okay, but where did Bishop Provianus get it from? Did he just open up the books one day and just figure everything out? No, he got it from Francis Shukartd. He was raised in this organization that was founded by Francis Shukartd. He was educated in schools that were run and led by Francis Shukartd. He went to seminary, instructed in theology according to the dictates of Francis Shukartd. That's where this whole thing came from, okay? And you contrast that with other crises in the church. God sends saints. He sends saints, and he sends them with miracles, okay? So the overall point I'm trying to make here is, so God abandons the church, the true Catholic Church, 1958, right? Pope Pius XII died. That church elects a false pope. The whole church follows this false pope to a false council. Comes out a false church. The divine element is no longer with the structure of the Catholic Church. It's not there anymore, right? He abandons there. Okay. So we should all leave that church. We should all reject these popes, reject everything, right? It's all invalid. And what should we accept in its place? The answer given to us by a madman whose life was not extraordinarily holy, but extraordinarily unholy. Okay? With no miracles. That's the guy we're supposed to follow. That's the idea. That's the answer to this problem. It's just, when you think about it, you just look at the facts and you think about it, you realize how stupid it is. At least I did, okay? And that's why I brought it up. And another thing about Francis Shukartd, I have a hard time talking about him without getting really angry, okay? Because I discovered something else. This extreme, I guess you could call it, traditional Catholic group that I was raised in, okay? We were also given the answer, okay? We were given the answer too, right? Christ abandoned the church. We believe that Paul VI was the last true pope, okay? But the whole thing is invalid. Okay. So we had that answer too. Where did we get it from? Well, when I was studying the history of sedevacantism, I noticed that the date that the CMRI started with Francis Shukartd was very closely aligned with the date that my group started. And I found out that Francis Shukartd was from Seattle, and our group started in Tacoma. Okay. I also found out by talking to somebody who was there at the time, the lady who really started this group, okay, with private, it was all centered around private revelations, okay, but she used to go and listen to Francis Shukartd speak. He would come to I think it was called the Garambadal Center or the Fatima Center. They had some venue, okay, and Francis Shukartd would come there. He would give these lectures. He would give these talks on current events going on in the church, you know, or on the Fatima message or whatever, right? And she used to go and listen to this guy talk. And I realized something, you know, that is where we got it from in this group that I was raised in. This idea that Christ abandoned the church. The entire church is following the devil. It's following a false pope. The whole church is wrong, right? And we're right. That's where it came from. And so that opens up Francis Shukartd, opens up his life to discernment, okay? We got to look at this guy's life. What kind of a man was he? Why should we listen to him? You know what I mean? Anyways, I'm running probably 3 times longer here than I wanted to. I wanted to make a small, brief point, but I think I'm done. I keep thinking I have to explain it better, but I don't want to repeat what I've already said. I just have to be satisfied with my imperfect explanation.